Welcome, Miss Tara Will, to Inside the Artist Studio. I'm so glad to beam you in from your studio on the East Coast. Always great to see you. And I love, oh my God, I love all the plants. Are you gearing up for winter weather?
Yes, I had to bring my jungle of plants outside in, so the studio kind of absorbs all of them. So
Nice. That is perfect. So, I can't wait to catch up with you because I think you have been up to a lot. Definitely exploring some new mediums and and are you okay, what people may not know, you have 4 kids. So life is a bit of a zoo over there, huh?
it is. It's funny. We have 4 children, and the oldest just started high school this year. So the school situation got different as far as like picking them up much earlier and all that kind of stuff. So it kind of carves my day into different sections that I'm not exactly used to. So I'm getting into the swing of things with that. So
How do you do that? I think, and that's maybe a question that is geared a little bit more towards other artists because, in particular, women, your days tend to be a little more chopped up, unless the spouse stays at home with the kids. But how do you juggle it all?
I have been lucky for the first, until now. My kids have gone to school with my husband, and so it's been very convenient if I need to leave or they come home with him in the afternoon. So I haven't had to really interrupt my day. And this year with my oldest being in high school, it's interesting because she's off at 2 o'clock.
Oh,
So yeah. So and today there was a half day, so it was 11 o'clock, and I'm like, gosh. Uh,
wow.
so I told her she's just gonna have to be my studio assistant if she's gonna come home so early. So, but it does shift things around, things that you have to kind of plan a little bit better for time management, just because, if you're printing, you can't lay out all the ink and then walk away. Or, the same with sometimes with oils, if you're in a spot you just don't want to leave. So you have to kind of make sure that you have that chunk of time before you even come out. Otherwise, I just kind of sit in the house and carve or something.
Yeah. So, all right. So, people who are familiar with your work are going to be, I think it's fair to say, most familiar with your pastel work, right?
Mhm.
And I would really recommend follow Tara on Instagram because you put some really fabulous reels out there of you at work. You speed it up, and it's cool to see these come to life.
Thank you. It's funny. I think people have about a 7-second real attention span. So you have to
Yeah.
into that time. So
Yeah. And these aren't tiny pieces that you're working on. You generally work like a full sheet size. And that's something else that with pastels and watercolor that, I think is worth talking about a little bit is that you are also kind of guided by the size of the paper, right?
yes, and I like a French paper, so it's also in centimeters, which does not make it a standard size for the United States either. So that kind of plays a role in the framing aspect at least. So yeah, but the full size sheets that I work with are about 19.5 by 25.5.
What nice. And so talk about like we know you as a pastelist primarily. So why pastel? What is it about pastel that you just really love?
I love the immediacy of the medium. So there's, no mixing colors and kind of not, I don't want to say wasting the time, but you have a very direct palette available to you. And it, I think the fact that that's available to you aids in the speed and how quickly you can produce work. But at the same time, I can't produce a color that I don't have. So
Mm.
there's pros and cons to each. Oftentimes you're looking more for how light or dark, the value of something. So you have to make adjustments if you don't have the color available in the pastel.
So in a way, and you're going to be in our contemporary realism show, which I love, even though a lot of your work is it's naturalism based on the landscape. But that comment is really interesting to me, because if you don't have a color, you have to adjust. And in a sense, it almost sounds like there's a push and pull with the medium, that the medium pushes you into pushing your own colors and abstraction in a way, because the way you lay down the pastel, it's color on top of color and you leave it alone. You're not mushing it all in like some pastelists do.
Exactly. So if you're taking a more direct approach in application, then you can't layer things and still have that kind of freshness or looseness to it, because that requires control to lay layers on top of each other.
Mhm.
So yeah, a lot of times you just have to kind of make a concession and choose something that's as close as you can get to what you need. And I think working plein air too, in the field, you only have so many colors available to you. In the studio, it's nicer because you have a wider range available to you to kind of pull.
Oh,
Go.
yeah. Yeah. So knowing that the pastel actually has a kind of a big voice in your work, then I mean, I think it's also kind of safe to say that you're not going after a direct replica of what you're seeing outside. So what is pushing you? What is the driving force in your work? What are we looking for in your work?
I try and tell students, because I've been teaching a lot, to
Mm.
have kind of, instead of a literal focal point in a painting, to have a conceptual focal point. So like, what is it about you that drew you to wanting to share that image with a viewer? And to really kind of take note of that and make sure that everything in the painting supports that concept.
Uh-huh.
And so it's more about capturing, the essence of a time or a place or a light, or something that kind of piques your interest that you're sharing with a viewer. So it could be anything. It could be, your kids, it could be a flower, it could be your yard, it could be, anywhere you travel.
Mhm.
So yeah, and I love, once again, like that Western landscape. I
Oh,
was first introduced to it in, I think 2020 or maybe 2019, right around COVID.
yeah.
And I just fell in love with the colors and the light out there. It's just so different than what I'm used to here in good old green Maryland. So
Yeah, it's very brown here right now, by the way. So it will, yeah, you'd need a whole different set of pastels. But hey, you know what? I want to dive into a screen share with you, and I'm going to have you do the screen share, um, because we are getting this. I'm really excited about this. We are getting 3 different mediums from you. So we're going to get pastel, and you're dipping a toe into oil painting, probably more than dipping a toe into it, diving right in, and printmaking. So I would love for you to screen share with us.
sure, let me do that real quick here. All right.
Awesome.
So here, now this one is a pastel. Try and make that a little bigger for you to see. Can you see that okay?
Yes. Okay. And I love, so we were just talking about landscape. And so this is not only a pastel, but it's a still life. Do you do many still life paintings?
Don't really. I feel like in the summertime when the sunflowers come out, and they're just always the subject that I find really interesting. A friend brought me some sunflowers, and so I thought I can't miss the opportunity to paint those. They're just too beautiful. So just set that up in the window of the studio here and did that from life here in the studio.
Nice. So so you had a couple still lifes we were looking at for the show coming up, and we decided on this one. And I want to get your take on why you like this one the best. I'll tell you what kind of piqued my interest in this one, which I think is I don't know if I'm sure it wasn't intentional, but out here with the Rocky Mountains, I'm just thinking sort of like the layers of it just has this just echo of our topography out here.
That's so funny. I didn't see that, but now that you say it, I get that feeling. That's funny.
Yeah.
Maybe it's subliminal. It was meant to be. Yeah, the thing that I liked about it was, of course, the sense of light, but also the kind of more cross hatching gestures that kind of mimic how I've been carving lately, or maybe those marks mimic the carving or vice versa. They inform each other, I think. And so to me, it's very dynamic to have that kind of sense of the human hand involved. And so I just thought it was kind of a fun and light and exciting piece.
Mm. Well, and it just has this wonderful filtered light in it. And I think, like, okay, I'm just going to admit I'm not the biggest fan of still lifes personally. Okay, just because they're kind of, as the French nature mot, right? Dead nature. And I don't know why. There's something about them that they really are still, and yet yours is not. And I think a lot of that is happening with the filtered light, but also that cross hatching, and then the like highlights on the top of the mounds of cloth and the oranges that are in there. It's just really fluid all of a sudden.
Well, thank you. It's funny because I don't really like still lives very much either. Um,
Yeah.
so
What
fun
is?
to push outside of that comfort zone a little bit, but this also has some cool color things
Mm,
going on as far as like not to get too into the technical end of it, but some simultaneous contrast going on in there with some really bright blues next to really bright kind of yellows, and how they kind of push and pull each other around in that as well.
yeah, exactly. Those lovely complements of warm and cool, and and across the color chart from each other. It really is so nice. And the way you work, you can sort out all these colors and keep them sorted out for us so that you're caught by probably the eye of and the filtered light through the petals on the sunflower. But then the more you move around in it, it's just really a lovely meditative piece in motion. It's just wonderful. I'm excited to see it in person.
You. I'm excited to send it your way.
Yay. Okay, what do you have next for us?
Move on to the oil.
Hmm.
So this actually was painted plein air, which
Really?
I've kind of moved away from a bit just because I just kind of burned out on that. But I have some friends who are just like, come on out with us, have fun. So I've been doing it more for myself and for entertainment than anything about competitive in
Oh,
nature.
that's
Um,
nice.
yeah, so it's nice to have that kind of outlet as well still. So
Yeah.
um
And it is kind of, you and I have talked in the past, probably not on a recording, but we've talked about the competitive side of plein air painting, which is because there are these competitions set up, and it sort of creates this kind of a panic and stress and dog and pony show to it. That seems a little bit of the opposite of what creating art should be.
yes. I think the whole concept of competitive painting is kind of silly just because there's so many different voices and so many different ways to express what you're seeing. That judging one better than another is completely subjective and doesn't really shouldn't mean much to anybody.
Yeah,
I
right.
mean, just as far as the judgment, I had a student the other day. We have a private Facebook group, and she posted a painting and she said, I posted this painting and 20 people have seen it, because she can see how many people have seen it, and only one person liked it. What's wrong with the painting? I
Mm,
went back and I did this and this and this and this to it. And so I think that so many artists, especially people learning, are caught up in that validation from external sources. And so I would encourage anybody to kind of try and leave that behind and find, paint in a way that you're satisfied and you're proud of what you're painting. And then, if people like it, that's just kind of, you know,
Bonus.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see how that it's really tough because you're in your studio predominantly by yourself. Even if there are other people in the studio, you're in your head by yourself creating work. And then as a student looking for validation that's got to be tough.
Yes. I think the quicker you can kind of move away from allowing other people to validate you, the
Mm,
better.
mm.
Um, and the quicker you'll probably be able to kind of find that voice that's unique to yourself, to not
Yeah.
have voices in your head kind of telling you what you should be doing. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So, you know me, I don't love to talk about technique on these calls, but what I do want to point out about this oil painting and another piece that's just a wow, is that with oil painting, you're mixing your colors on your palette, which is different. It's completely different from the pastels, and especially the way you're producing pastel paintings. And you could be mixing the color a lot more, but instead you're sticking with more of a pastelist. You have the freedom of creating the color that you want exactly or close to it, but the way you're laying down the color and the brushwork, and I love that you expanded this piece so we could see the actual brush work. You can see the bristles on there and how you laid down the paint and then left it alone. And I think that's a real Tara Will trademark in my mind.
why, thank you. I think, and I'm learning, it's funny, one of the things, if just a quick technical thing, I'm trying to actually keep lighter values off my palette altogether until later stages of the painting too, just because I know that it's very easy to produce that kind of mud mix of things. So I find that keeping the lighter things off the palette altogether until you're later in stages kind of helps me control the values a little bit better.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I could see that. That's really interesting. When did you dive into oil painting?
I've done it for, I would say, like on and off a couple years. I've just never really committed the time like that, for the pastels, it's been, 12 years of pretty constant usage almost daily for the most part. And so definitely need to commit more time to being as comfortable in oil, because I don't think that I'm quite there yet, but I'm getting there. Every time I go out, I'm a little more comfortable. So that's good.
Nice. Yeah, that's really nice. Was there a reason to kind of dig into oil? I mean, I know we were talking about pastels always under glass. Is that one of the reasons?
That is one of the reasons. I think too that there's this kind of medium hierarchy of what's important to the art world, and oils seem to, for some reason, sit at the top of that list.
They
Uh,
do.
Not that I think that they should, but it's nice to try and be proficient and be able to kind of hit as many different collectors and the variety of textures that you can't get with pastel. So there's just kind of a lot. They don't have to go behind expensive museum glass, all of those good things. But each one kind of has its pros and cons. And so it's fun to try and learn how to be proficient in all of them, I think.
Speaking of learning new things, let's look at the lino cut we're getting from you. I am
Yeah.
so excited about this. So this is printmaking, and I did not know that you got a press.
Yes.
Tell us about your press.
Yeah. My press is a very large, I want to say it's about 36 or 40 inches wide and about 7 or 8 feet long. So I can
Oh,
eventually get to some big work if I get some big linoleum. But it came from a barn in Pennsylvania.
hmm.
Um, we needed, oh my gosh, there were probably like 5 or 6 guys, friends, and my husband and brothers, and to carry it in because it's very, very heavy. I want to
Yeah.
say 100 pounds or something
How
ridiculous.
many?
I want to say it's like 700, 600 or 700 pounds.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so a huge machine. It can do lithography as well, which is nice. I'm not there yet as far as right now. I've just been doing kind of more relief with the linoleum. But yeah, it was quite a undertaking to get it into the studio and not break anyone's back.
Oh
So
my God.
for
No.
a while.
Oh my God. No kidding. I think that move was a little more than pizza and beer, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it was additional reciprocation of moving heavy things for a long time.
Yeah,
So
the rest of your life. Hey, so lino cut. So this is a linoleum block that you're using, and you are physically carving into, and so the black that we see is the top that was not carved away. Talk about your process and your carving.
I'm a little weird as far as the carving goes, in that I like it to be, once again, a little more fluid and organic in how it comes together, which does lend to kind of painful mistake learning.
Oh.
I don't know how to say that any better.
Yeah.
But I think, for the most part, I think most printmakers tend to be more meticulous in the planning stages. And I kind of like to just, everything is, of course, a mirror image. So whatever image you're looking at, you need to kind of initially, if you want it to go a specific direction, you're going to have to flip it mirror image.
Mhm.
But I just draw right onto the linoleum with a Sharpie marker,
Oh.
and so then I just carve anything that's not been drawn on. And so it's a little bit more impulsive, or, a little bit less planned, I think, than a lot of printmaking tends to be, very meticulously planned. So
And that seems to be really part of your voice, and your nature is not that you don't plan. When you have 4 kids, you plan the bejeez out of your life, I'm sure. But to be able to dive in and react spontaneously.
I think that's important because it kind of informs decisions that you wouldn't initially make if they were planned. And some of those decisions can be really beautiful, little kind of happy accidents that happen, that show the humanity piece of it. So I think for me, I like that kind of more impulse, and not glossing over everything so much and making it so refined and perfect that you
Mm.
can't see that human hand anymore. So
So this one, you're working on a number of lino cuts. We're going to get this one that is based on, I think you said, an apple tree.
yes, yes. There's a local, I did a plein air painting actually with another set of friends who were like, you have to come out in the spring. And I really liked the way the painting turned out. So I actually did this lino cut based off of the painting that
Oh.
I did. So there is kind of a mate to this in oil that's very different, just obviously because it has color and all of that. But so yeah, I just kind of used that as a reference point and drew directly onto the linoleum and then carved it out. There's so many different kinds of tools and papers, and there's so many technical pieces that is not in my wheelhouse of knowledge. So it's been really fun experimenting with
Nice.
all of that.
And so a lot of times I think when we see print work, especially woodcut reduction or lino cut, they're smaller blocks. They tend to be like 10 by 10 or smaller. But this is a pretty good size block, right?
Yeah, so this one's 12 by 18.
So
And
18 tall, 12 wide. That's a really nice size. And then the sheet of paper.
the sheet on this one is 22 by 16, I want to say.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it's a hardy size. And then there aren't that many suppliers that will actually sell the linoleum that large.
Oh.
Um, So McLean's actually in Portland sells up to 18 by 24 or larger if you want larger.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, it's a little more limiting just because, you know, not a lot of people are carving that big. You're right, as far as
Yeah.
the plate size.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how these three mediums inform what you do. How do they respond to each other, or how have they evolved your process, I guess?
Um, it's funny. I've heard that every artist has a medium that's kind of like their home medium or like their native tongue, if you will. And
Yeah.
so I think pastels are definitely my native tongue. But what's nice about them is that they translate nicely into other mediums and they even play nicely with other mediums. You can do mixed media stuff with pastels and
Oh.
different mediums too. And so there's something very intuitive about not having that extension of a brush, you know, the kind of I don't want to say like guttural, but you know, there's that like kind of it's in your hand, it's raw, it's scratchy, it's
Mhm.
um, and so that I think just translates into other mediums as far as the process of how to really make a mark that's strong, make a mark that's quiet, make a mark that, you know, supports once again that whole conceptual focal point instead of a literal one that's often taught.
Uh,
So yeah, it's just I think all the mediums perform different things really well and they inform how you use the other in a nice way, I think.
yeah. Wow. Okay, so um my last question, will you be joining us this winter? Are you going to come out to Denver?
No, I would really like to.
Yeah.
I'm going to do my best. I actually might have the opportunity to work with a pastel company that I'm a fan of. So I'm hoping to maybe segue
Ah, is
that
that
into
Terry
it is Terry Ludwig. So
Yeah.
I've never been to their space before, so I would love to try and get out there and see what they do because they make a product that I just love.
Mm,
So
mhm. Yeah, I think are his sons have taken over, I think.
yes,
Yeah.
Jeff. I don't know if there's more than one, but Jeff,
Jeff, his son. Yeah.
yeah, one that I've been talking to. So
Mm,
he's always very generous with samples for students and all that kind of good stuff. So
nice. Yeah. Well, good. Well, I'm hoping we'll see you. And I want to thank you again for carving some time out of your afternoon for us. And I cannot wait to see these pieces. It's just going to be wonderful. And I just adore your work. It just makes me happy.
you know.
So this just a quick reminder. So Tara's work is going to be in Contemporary Realism now at Gallery 1261 in January. So follow Tara on Instagram. Always great to see new work. And Tara, thank you. Thank you.
Having me.
Absolutely. Take good care.
You too.